Yo, what is up guys? It is esports content entertainment coming at you guys with another video here today. And in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my LEC 2023 Spring Split Week 2 recap. So I am sorry that this video is coming out a lot later during this week than it should have actually. So moving forward, I'm going to try and get these videos out a lot quicker to you guys than what's been going on currently right now. And pretty much the TLDR is that I have been not going through a lot of things as a personal life problems, right? But there's just been a lot of things going on that I can't really talk about right now because they're not bad, they're actually really good. I'm just getting prepared for something that's going to end up happening closer to the end of this month actually, and it's had me pretty much just going in town, getting some errands done. I've had to do some other things as well, and then as you guys know, I have a main YouTube channel where I live stream 7 days a week on that channel while also making videos on that channel as well that I post always consistently, regularly, 7 days a week pretty much. So yeah, I know my time has gotten a lot better between handling this channel and my main YouTube channel as well, and that was my biggest goal going into this year, was just managing my time a whole lot better than what I was doing with my time a few years back actually, right? So for the most part, when it comes to the LEC right now, I know a lot of people have been talking about the format overall, and is the format exciting for the LEC, or is it boring, or should they kind of change things up a little bit more or tweak some things? Overall, if you're asking my own personal opinion, I like the format. The format is actually really good. Think about it this way. There's 9 BO1s, right? So there's just 3 weeks of BO1s. Everything is in a super week, so you're not dragging out the weeks actually, right? Every BO1 essentially matters, even if you're playing against, let's say a bottom tier team, because let's say if you randomly drop a game to that bottom tier team, that one single loss could pretty much determine on if you actually make it to the next stage or if you actually don't make it to the next stage. Because before, in the older format, when you had just the 9 weeks of the BO1s, the 18 games actually, is that certain teams who didn't perform good initially when the split would start would go, okay, we'll just scale up with the split, which pretty much means that, we'll just kind of get our shit together as the weeks go by. But this format does not incentivize that. This format incentivizes you need to be actually good, or relatively what good is in the LEC, pretty much right out the gate in order to kind of scale up with the actual format itself. So that's why I like this format for the LEC, and these are kind of formats we should have in the other regions too, because with the LCS, let's just use that as a format comparison to this one, right? So last year, the LEC had the same format, right? And at a certain point, when you have these 18 game double round robins of BO1s, let's be completely honest with ourselves here. At a certain point, you know which teams are going to make it. You know which teams you don't want to watch anymore. I would not like to watch Dig and Toss games and Immortals games in the LCS more than what we have to. Just factor this in. If the LEC format for this year was the LCS format, you would not see Dig and Toss and Immortals play more games. Do you really have to see Dig and Toss and Immortals play more games to understand that these teams are just straight up trash? No, you don't. So watching more of them doesn't really make any difference. Why does it make any difference? Because they're already bad and dog shit. It's not getting better. We saw it play out. It didn't get better. It actually probably only got worse each week for the most part, right? So I like that they're condensing the BO1s, because people always said, the reason why spring splits technically didn't matter is because people would kind of just coast spring splits, right? Well, now you don't have that. These 9 BO1 games you play matter, all of them. All of them matter, because people have always mentioned, do certain games matter? People really don't like it when there's games that theoretically don't matter, right? All the BO1s matter, though. So then, let's say if you're an Astralis, was considered to be a bottom tier team for a while, and you would now theoretically drop a game to someone like Team BDS. Well, you can't do that because that is relatively the team of strength of players that you actually need to overcome. Teams like Astralis and SK and BDS, who are considerably bad orgs essentially, right? Well, they would take solace in getting wins against each other, because getting wins against like bigger dogs like Fnatic and Mad Lions and Rogue / Koi and G2 would be pretty much an upset, right? Well, if they now start dropping games to each other, or they lose a certain crucial game, that could now make or break them actually getting into the next round as well. Also, when it comes to their playoff system with the LEC, BO3s, I enjoy watching BO3s. Guys, the best regions in the world play BO3s. LPL and the LCK. People understand that, right? The best regions in the world play BO3s. LEC now is playing BO3s. There hasn't been BO3s in the LEC since 2017. So, yeah, playing BO3s is way more beneficial. Also, what happened with the LEC 2023 winter split, what ended up happening was that even during, like, okay, so you had SK Gaming really overperform, playing really great, right? It still ended up coming down to G2, Mad Lions, and Koi, who obviously rebranded as, who was Rogue, but rebranded to Koi, right? So at the end of the day, it still panned out to the top 3 LEC orgs anyway. Obviously, Fnatic would be a top LEC org, but obviously that was the split where was the first time in the organization's history they didn't even make playoffs, actually. But it still relatively came down to the teams you expect to do well right when it gets into, you know, the BO3 and the BO5 stage actually coming up. Because Koi, similarly, in the last winter split, didn't look that great. Right when it got to BO3s, they just started waxing people. Right when it got to BO5s, they just started waxing people. And then they just lost to G2. Right? So it ended up coming down to what you already expected anyway. And with it being top 4, you also weed out, you know, the 5, 6 seats as well, right? So, like, yes, when you have a 16 kind of playoff format, the issue here is, well, a fifth seed team and a 6th seed team, depending on which split you're talking about, which layer of context you're talking about, all matters, right? But sometimes those teams can be just as bad as, like, a team that's in 7th. The only thing that's really different is game score differentials, actually, you know? So, yeah, I like the LEC's format, and I just, yeah, keep doing this format. Also, instead of getting top 6, you get top 4. So now you're only going to see games from the top 4 teams after the BO3 stage. If you can't make it past the BO3 stage, should you have been top 4 anyway? Probably not. Like, would you guys would have seen Vitality last split in BO5s? Like, that would have probably been pretty bad, right? So the main crucial things that I want to focus on, recapping this week from the LEC 2023 Spring Split Week 2, is talking about Team Vitality first, right? So talking about Team Vitality, people have been, I guess, noticing more that Bo has had some pretty run-it-down games, actually, right? And they've been, I guess, theoretically comparing Bo to, like, the other players in the LEC regarding, like, the jungle position, right? So this is the idea that I kind of subscribe to when it comes to Bo. It's like, there are games where he does look pretty good. And I think people have to understand this too. When it comes to Bo, it seems like he's under such a huge microscope right now, given his hype coming into the split, that people have just forgotten that he actually had really good games last split, and he's actually had really good games this split as well. Like in week 1, he didn't even die as a jungler. He was just completely gapping people. The issue with Bo that I've seen is that people have kind of overshadowed anything he's actually did as good when the weeks he did play good, and I've just primarily only choose to focus on the games he's played bad. Now, the games he's played particularly pretty bad in are bad. I will give that to you. He's played really bad in a lot of games. That 0-10 Vi game he had last split. He played a Vi game this split where it looked pretty bad. There's been many other games he's played bad, like the Karthus game he played bad in the BO3 stage. There was that game also against Team Heretics in the BO3 stage last split where he was playing, it was a Kindred matchup, I think, where he just got completely destroyed, actually. So my thing here is, like, how good is Bo, right? So he is good mechanically, right? Now, I've seen this happen a lot of times in League of Legends too, where it really doesn't matter how good someone mechanically is. It only really matters if those mechanics can translate over into that player essentially dominating another player, right? Because the thing here is, people have mentioned, well, Yike is doing very, very well on G2. Well, to be fair, on G2, like, it's much easier to jungle when you have good players at every position, guys. Like, I played jungle a lot. I love playing jungle a lot, actually. And it's much easier to jungle, just in general, if, like, all your lanes, in theory, and on paper, should be winning, right? But I think people miss this idea as well, is where, like, you're not actually watching the games, right? So, someone could be mechanically better than someone, but another player could be smarter than that player at knowing how to do different things. Case in point, pathing, knowing to where to be on the map, then also understanding, hey, we can't fight this, let's give this objective over, and then let's just do something else. So that's kind of been my thought process on people trying to, let's say, undervalue Bo, to just pretty much shit on him, and to overrate Bo. I think people do overrate Bo as well. Like, there's been games where you cannot deny he's played completely bad. You know, there's been games where he's completely ran it down. Like, just absolutely just straight up ran it down. You know, just griefed it on stage. But I think people have to understand that on certain matchups, if you're not ahead, you just will do that. Because that's just, you have to go in and just instantly be the engage, and then you're going to get destroyed because you're probably you're not tanky enough, you don't have your items, you just get exploded anyway. Bo seems to be, to me, that he's just I would say a worse version of Malrong, or a better version of Malrong. They're pretty much just about the same anyway. It's like a flip a coin. It's like 1A and 1B. It's like, who would you really want, Malrong or would you want Bo? But you can't deny to me that Jankos has looked good against him. Like, El Yoya's looked good against him. Yika's looked good against him. Marcoon's looked good against him. Every jungler, essentially outside of like Xerxes and outside of pretty much Xerxes, everyone's looked pretty good into him. You know, he has great mechanics, and he definitely has raw mechanical potential that has been shown in the games. I'm not denying that, but it's not like his pathing and everything he does is not something as this big glaring thing that, oh, well, I can't get that from that guy. Like, you're getting a slightly less mechanical player, and it's like, okay, like, but so what I'm saying is, like, as good as his mechanics are, there's not a true real upside to this guy. People don't understand that, right? That's just what I'm saying. There's no big upside to him if he's just going to be on the same level as these other guys. Yes, he might be, in theory, be better than them, but when we're watching these games here, it just hasn't really panned out that way. You know, especially coming off of this week as well, where he was on Gragas and pretty much gave up that dragon against G2 when he was facing G2, going in at a moment he could not have gotten anything for it, blowing his Gragas body slam, blowing his ult, then blowing his flash. It's like, just things like that are just really bad, you know? And also remember that there's problems with Team Vitality in terms of the communication because Bo is Chinese and Photon is Korean, so that's already going to be, not like an inefficient top side, but it's going to cause more problems than other teams with imports like Koreans, because at least if you have two Koreans, then at least that's a similar speaking structure, right? When it comes to Bo and Photon, that's not going to be the same structure because one is Chinese and one is, you know, obviously Korean. Also, Perkz has had games this year where he's looked good, but he's also had games where he's pretty much not looked good either. You know, Perkz has not been like that kind of carry mid laner that he's been. Like, I say last year he's had much better games. Maybe like this year he's just not playing as well, right? Then you also have Upset, and I still think Upset is really good. Upset still played really good this week. You know, there was that moment where he was playing against G2 and he had that fight toward bot lane around that part of the map where you're going towards Dragon from, if you're on like the red side, right? Or is it blue side? Yeah, if you're on red side, you're going towards down the area. They got into that scuffle where they misplaced their target selection, and it just looked really, really bad for him. But yeah, I still think Upset is still the best, one of the best ADCs, obviously, in the league. He's played fantastic, you know, this split so far. Hopefully Team Vitality can secure more wins this week, and hopefully they can get into a good group to give them an easier chance in the BO3 stage, actually. I still think Kaiser has had an okay split. Kaiser looked better with Upset, but that's to be expected. It's probably because they have an agreement on how they should be playing the lane and how it should be actually played out, right? But I think that's the problem with Team Vitality is the team just kind of, I would say, live and dies by how Bo plays the game. If Bo is just not doing as well, or he is evenly matched by the other junglers, then what is their real edge there, right? Because I would say their only other edge is like Upset and Photon. Photon has been quietly one of the best top laners in the LEC. He was the best top laner last split. Looks to still be the best top laner this split. I mean, I would say they should start playing through Photon like they played through Upset. I think they should start doing that, honestly. So, I will admit this. I've not really cared too much about Team BDS, but Team BDS has quietly had a pretty good split. Let's look at their games, actually. So, they lost to SK, who they lost, yes, in theory, should be better than them, who's actually a strong team right now. A solid, okay team. Alright, so they lost to SK, and they ended up losing, to, what was it, G2, I think? Yeah, they ended up losing to G2, and they ended up losing to SK. Outside of that, they have won against Astralis, who looks pretty decent right now. They also beat G2 as well. Then they also beat Fnatic. I mean, it's Fnatic, right? Most people are going to beat Fnatic, right? Then they beat Heretics. Most people are going to beat Heretics. Then they also beat Mad Lions right now. So they've had quietly a pretty decent split by how their record shows. And in their games, they actually have a decent, solid, okay team, right? They played through Crowny, which they should. It's the meta for that. And Adames looked pretty solid, right? If the problem here is that when you're talking about teams like Team BDS and Astralis, yeah, they might look good right now when it's BO1s, but I need to really see them come BO3s because, you know, I think people need to understand, when you put kind of faith into some of these teams like that, who like look good during this kind of stage and then they can just get blown out in the next stage, realistically, they're getting blown out like that sometimes, or more or less most of the times, in scrims. The only reason why you don't see that on stage is because it is a BO1, right? It's just one game. Like, anybody could look good in just one game, right? I just hope Team BDS and teams like Astralis can translate what makes them look good in this stage to the next stage when they actually make it. SK Gaming also have had a pretty solid split overall, you know. I think the only games where they look bad for them is like if Certus actually is just getting gapped in the mid lane. It's not to say that Certus is a bad player, but Certus to me kinda is their weakest player, because I think Marcoon's just playing better. Irrelevant has played good both splits so far. The bot lane is just one of the best bot lanes quietly in the LEC. I think they're actually really legit, honestly. It's basically, if Certus doesn't just kind of grief the game for them, they can do better. It's not to say that Certus is bad. He's had some great pop-off games, but there's been some games where he's definitely been the liability for them, right? But overall for SK, they should definitely, you know, be in a prime position to make it to the next stage, actually. Plus, let it be known that on this week, SK Gaming was playing for first. If SK had beaten Vitality, they would, at just for that day, had been in first place in the LEC at 4-0 actually. SK Gaming were playing to be undefeated in the LEC. That's how crazy they've turned this ship around for themselves, which is actually pretty good. Alright, so let's go through some of these teams. So, a bit of roster news for if you guys haven't been following this. Vetio has now been essentially kicked out of Excel for Abadage. You might remember Abadage. He played on 100 Thieves. He won the LCS 2021 Summer Split, right? He was on Schalke. He was in Turkey, right? He's been to Worlds a few times, right? For me in Excel, like, even when Excel win, it's still just like this. I don't know. This team is just, I don't know, just nothing's coming together for this team, right? Like, I still say Otawamne is their best player, right? But Xerxes is just straight up dog shit. Like, he's had one good game. He had that Gragas game in week 1 where he looked okay, alright? Vetio never really became that Vetio that he was in 2022. Like, I want to make sure I put an asterisk to this as well. And this asterisk being, Vetio started his LEC career on 2021 with Misfits. I don't know if people, he didn't look good in 2021. He looked good in 2022, so given the players he was surrounded by, and because the meta was basically scale up with Zeri and Akali and Yumi and a lot of teams. You guys go back and watch the games. I don't gotta explain it to you. There were teams who could have easily beaten Misfits, let them scale up, and then they were able to beat them. Because in playoffs, remember, Vetio wasn't good in playoffs, though. Vetio in playoffs got completely dicked around. But when it came to the regular seasons, right, the regular season splits for summer and spring of last year in 2022 for the LEC, he looked good, right? Now come this year, he's just not looked that good at all, right? And I think it's because when you pair a player like that with other players, like, because he just wants to kind of just sit in lane and scale. Well, if you have other players who want to do that, it's just not going to look that good. Like, I even think Patrick has not even had a good year so far. I think Limit has made the lane for Patrick and him a bit better, but it's still just, like, meh, you know, for Patrick this year, right? Who's usually a top 5 ADC in the LEC, right? So, like, my thing with XL is coming into this week, you're putting in Abadage, who I guess in theory should be better than Vethio, right? Well, it's going to be a tough week because XL play Koi, XL play Astralis, XL play BDS. And they should realistically go 0-3. Even if Abadage plays well, they realistically should be going 0-3. You know? Like, I think XL, they just need a few more roster changes. Get rid of Xerxes. He's so fucking bad. Why are they so built into this guy? He sucks. Like, it's just not good. Xerxes is dog shit, man. So, let's go to... Man, there's a lot of Jinx shit here. Alright, let's go to teams that people wanted me to talk about later, and I'll do the teams that people, are in theory, don't want to talk about right now, alright? So I talked about SK, BDS, Vitality... Talked about Excel. Let's talk about Astralis. I think Astralis should have a few more wins on their scoreboard than they do. Astralis with leader actually look competent. You know, they look like pretty solid. They should definitely have beaten Team BDS too. So my thing with Astralis currently right now is consistency and closing out. There are some games that look really sloppy from them. There are also games where they've just completely have thrown, right? So my thing here with Astralis is if they clean up their team fighting and clean up their... They need to be better at being consistent in what they're trying to do, which is essentially get through the early game. Having these, like, early game picks that have a lot of skirmish power will be more consistent in that, and they can get a few more wins. That's essentially it, right? Let's go to Koi. Koi is just... It's the same thing as last winter, where, like, I don't really know how to rate this team. Like, in BO3s, are they just gonna stomp again? Or is this that their form is? Because Malrong will just sacrifice him. He'll just throw himself to the fire to get himself to get his team these resources, right? But then after that, it's just like his players Larsen's going to kind of sit there and scale. Comp and Trimby have really regressed since last year. But in the BO3 stage of last split, they still looked pretty competent. But they're just not as strong as they were, you know, last split. Remember, guys, in the offseason, Koi tried to get rid of Comp too. So keep that in mind there as well. Jagenda's had, like, some pop-off games, right, on Jace, and he had a Cassandra game that looked pretty good, but it's just... I think this is just a ceiling for Koi. I think this is just about as good as it gets. I mean... There's not much more upside to this. Like, yeah, if they play well, when they play their style very well, it looks very good. But when they're not playing their style very well, when they actually do themselves lose their early game, it just looks really bad for them, actually. All right, let's go to G2. G2 have an interesting way to look at them, right? So Broken Blade has been pretty bad, actually. Broken Blade's been probably the worst player on the team. And to be fair, he was the worst player on G2 last year as well. I think he had an okay winter split overall, right? Okay, right? But his thing used to be that he could, like, lane very well. Now, he just doesn't lane very well at all and just kind of loses every matchup, even when he's favored in the counter pick that they'll give him sometimes, which is like, what? I think overall for G2, Hans, Sama, and Mickey are still one of the best bot lanes in EU. Yike has actually had a pretty good split overall, and Caps has looked solid enough. So my thing with G2 right now is how are they going to look during this week to close out the split? Because if this is still the same G2 that's winning pretty much all their scrims, yeah, they're probably going to look pretty good, even if they manage to, you know, make it obviously past this stage. And they've already secured 4 wins. That's pretty much enough to get them out to the next stage anyway. They play SK, they play Fnatic, and they play Mad Lions. That should easily be like a 3-0 week for G2, realistically on paper, right? Alright, let's go to Team Heretics. Team Heretics are just dog shit. Like, Evie is clearly probably one of the worst top laners in the LEC. Like, that Scion game he played might have been one of the worst Scion games I've ever seen play. That guy was literally griefing on stage. Like, Team Heretics right now are so lucky they have Jankos. Because if they didn't have Jankos, this would look so bad from them. Like I mentioned last split, for the winter, for the LEC 2023, right? Was Jankos is one of the key players keeping them in these games, literally keeping them from honestly not imploding and falling apart. Because look at it this way, he's doing everything he can with essentially Ruby and Evie, and I thought Ruby had some standout games last split, but has been relatively irrelevant this split, right? Jack Spectra, he plays team fights very well, but outside of that, his laning phase is really bad, and Mersa's just dog shit. Well, I don't know what to say. Mersa's just one of the worst supports in the LEC. Don't know why this guy gets all the chances he's gotten. He must be a god in scrims because this guy is bad, right? So literally with Team Heretics, I easily can see them like not making it to the BO3 stage because this split just, I don't know. Their games are awful. Like, even if they play good games, it's so sloppy from them. Like, nothing is clean from them. It's just bad. This is a bad team, actually. And it's literally just Yanko stuck in elo hell for the most part, right? Let's go to the other team that I like and watch in the LEC, which is Mad Lions. Mad Lions this split also look bad. Like, Mad Lions are panning out to be the team that people thought they would be last split, right? Karzi and Hylissang just doing the sprint Olympics down there in the bot lane. Niski not having like the best split either. Elyoya and Niski's consistency also not being a big beneficiary factor for them this split, which was a big bonus for them last split. That's kind of been good, but not as good as it was last split. Elyoya's not looked as good. Probably his worst split that I would say, like, outside of his career so far, you know, because he's been gapped in a lot of their games. One of the best players on their team, which is Chasey, who I think of, like, Chasey has had a pretty good year, all things considered, like, from winter to right now, right? But they're not setting Chasey up to really carry. Like, he's better than Armut and Arome, right? But they still they're not playing through this guy even when he has a lead, and it's like, well, if he's going to be the player with the lead, then you probably should play through him, right? It's not been the case either, right? So, do I think that Mad Lions can actually make the BO3 stage? I mean, it would be crazy if the LEC 2023 Winter Split finalists in Mad Lions didn't make it to the BO3 stage. It's very possible. Mad Lions, on paper, have a tough strength of schedule. They play Fnatic, who in theory they should beat. They play SK. SK should mollywop them. But they've gone back and forth with SK, right? You know, so that could be that's a toss up there, right? Then they also face against G2. This is a really hard week for Mad Lions. So if they were hoping to get into the BO3 stage, they were already hoping to get into the BO3 stage with the earlier, easier on paper games they had in weeks 1 and 2. So, like, if they make it, like, to get them in, all they really need to do to get in is to get 2 wins, right? Or at least 3 wins. If they can get 3 wins, they could probably get in, right? So they're looking to get a game win, and that should be against Fnatic. If they get that game win against Fnatic, they're pretty much all but assured in, because we saw it last split where, like, 2 teams that only had, like, 2 wins or 1 win just getting out. The problem here with this split, another bigger problem comes in, is every team is pretty much tied with each other. We have a 4-way tie for 7th, a 2-way tie for 5th, and a 4-way tie for 1st right now in the LEC. Then the difference with this split compared to the last split is that there's not a team with 1 win this split right now. Last split, it was just Excel with 1 win and Fnatic with 2 wins. Now, that's been thrown out, there's been a wrench thrown into that specifically because there's literally 4 teams with 2 wins now, okay? So, it's looking pretty bad here for Mad Lions. If they miss, you know, going to the BO3 stage, that would suck. I do think they can pull it out to go 3-0, but I really hope they do. I hope they do it. I like watching Mad Lions. You know, I love watching them play all the time. It's always exciting for some reason, you know, but it's a good chance they actually missed the BO3 stage this split, right? It's a good chance, good possibility. Last thing to talk about is good old Fnatic. I would say Fnatic for last for some reason. I don't know why. Fnatic only got their wins because of Razork. That's it. Razork literally won them all their games. That's it. The only way Fnatic makes it to the BO3 stage is if Razork has a carry performance like he did. Even when Oscarin got resources, he still sucked. Reckless and Advian have looked like whatever, like just meh. You know, Humanoid just looks meh. Literally, Razork, if he plays the way he played, like during the week I'm recapping right now for you guys, they could probably make it in. They'll get their 4 wins. Are they going to get their 4 wins on... Who they're going to get their other 2 wins from? Mad Lions, I guess, should beat them. G2 on paper should just rip apart Fnatic. And Fnatic should lose to Astralis. Like, it's... The same thing that I said with Mad Lions, is I'll say for Fnatic too, and echo the same sentiment. It's literally, there's a good chance Fnatic also miss the BO3 stage this split as well. But you also have Excel and Team Heretics, who should, in theory, miss as well. So if Excel and Team Heretics miss, I'm not surprised. But looking at it right now, Fnatic and Mad Lions should make it through. But, like, anything, like, crazier things have happened in the LEC. Like, even looking at Fnatic's schedule, it's like, are we sure that Fnatic can beat Mad Lions right now? Because that should be just even across the board. Maybe you favor Mad Lions as the game goes on longer, right? G2 and Fnatic, like, that's G2's gonna just fucking fist them like a Bella Danger gets fisted, and, like, Fnatic faces Astralis. Maybe. Astralis has looked pretty okay this split, so, yeah, Astralis should just blow them the fuck out. So, yeah, unless Razork has his massive carry performance like he had literally this past week, I don't see him making it, honestly. But that's pretty much it. So, sorry this video's coming out late to you guys. I will see you guys later. Like, comment, and subscribe. Most of all, enjoy. I am MSK, and this is Esports Content Entertainment, your one place for esports content. Alright, see you guys later. Deuces. Peace.